Red makes you faster. Hello, I hope you are well and you have a fantastic day. Orks are brutal, but at least for me, they are so funny. Let's get to the third part of the article about orks. Forces of the orks. Orks are a barbaric alien race that infests the galaxy from end to end. No matter how far mankind has traveled, for the galactic or to the blackest depths of deep space, they have found that orks are either already there waiting for them or will be arriving there soon to launch the characteristic attacks. Orks are brutal, green-skinned creatures that have more in common with a great savage ape than a man. They delight in carnage, and so great is their need for conflict that, without a more obvious opponent, the orks will indulge in fighting bloody wars with themselves, just to ensure they get a good scrap. Over the long millennia, the orks have proven to be the most prolific threat to the Imperium. They can be found in countless warbands, clans and tribes spread across many planets, even forming their own volatile stellar empires. They are so numerous that, if the disparate groups were ever to cease hostilities with their own kind, the orks would be able to sweep over the galaxy, smashing everything as they passed. Warg. Size dominates ork society, and the largest of the kind invariably rise to lead into battle. On occasion, an especially hulking ork war boss or warlord, a violent visionary who can inspire his thick-skulled comrades like no other, will conquer several rival groups, forming the survivors into a massive single army. What follows is known by that crude race as a warg, part invasion and part holy war. During such times, the greenskins will put aside the differences and rival clans work together. It is not just rare interspecies cooperation that happens during a warg, but other behavioral oddities occur as well. Large conglomerations of orks generate mental energies, the bloodlust echoing through the warp to act as a beacon, summoning more greenskins to join the cause. Orks many star systems distant become further agitated, multiplying in numbers and attacking anything they can reach at a redoubled rate. Ork mech boys, as they call their engineer builders, begin the construction of larger works of battle, towering stompers, or, if there is a large enough stockpile of parts, even a mighty gargant. Such creations are great mechanical effigies of the ork gods, laden with enough guns and missiles to flatten a city. Mech boys also set together crude spacecraft, so that the hordes of warriors and massive war machines can rush off to join the growing movement, taking part in the ensuing battles. Ork wargs grow in size so long as they have something to conquer. Success breeds further success, and every ork victory calls yet more greenskins to join the cause. They can mass in such overwhelming numbers that nothing can stop them. Even fortress worlds or space marine home worlds are overrun, the orks blasting them apart to fuel the warg further. Of course, it takes a dominant ork to hold the warg together, as the many different factions are always prone to break apart at any time. A large and powerful ork can lead a warg for a while, but to string together many victories and to find ways to get the massed infantry and machines of war into contact with worthy targets to smash takes an ork with cunning as well. Luckily, the combination of brawn and brains is rare amongst orks, although when such a leader rises, the whole galaxy trembles. Some of the darkest moments in the history of the Imperium have been the result of massive ork wargs. The war boss known only as the Beast nearly took over the galaxy, and it can only be a matter of time before another apocalyptic greenskin rising takes place. The war boss known only as the Beast nearly took over the galaxy, and it can only be a matter of time before another apocalyptic greenskin rising takes place. Warband. Ork warbands infest the galaxy from end to end, and they vary greatly in size and composition. Wherever they come from, they will inevitably include the warboss that united them in the first place, a hardcore of his most dangerous warriors, and a teeming mass of boys drawn to the promise of carnage. Orks draw great strength from their numbers, the psychic warg energy that courses through each greenskin amplified by the bellowing mass of battle-hungry maniacs charging towards the enemy lines. This mysterious force can be harnessed by a canny war boss to drive his lads into a killing frenzy at a critical moment, driving them forward in a ground-pounding stampede that can overrun the most stubborn of enemy gun lines. Even the Gretchen brave enough to accompany the boys try to make themselves heard over the deafening volume of the Ork battle cry. They give it the best shot, biting and scrabbling at the enemy's weak spots in their eagerness for the kill. Needless to say, the true danger comes from the charging Orks themselves, a thunderous mass of muscle, metal and bad attitude that slams headlong into the foe before breaking apart to hack and slay with joyous abandon. Commanders. Warlord. An Ork warlord is an exceptionally powerful Ork war boss who is particularly powerful, wealthy, and successful on the field of battle. In taking on this title, the warlord consolidates power through cunning, ruthlessness and sheer force of will, bringing together disparate Ork tribes, mobs, and warbands under his banner to serve some greater purpose. Usually, this greater purpose is simply to sweep through star systems to fight as many fights as they can and to collect as much treasure as they can carry. Occasionally, however, such an army turns into a full-blown warg, numbering in the hundreds of thousands or even millions of Orks, and can pose a grave threat to even the most strongly fortified sector or segmentum. Army upon army will flock to the banner of a prominent warlord until he commands a horde of terrifying size. Ork warlords often command forces so large that they can wipe out entire armies and conquer whole star systems. With the green-skinned fury of warg, they can successfully face entire Imperial armies, the hordes of the forces of chaos, or any other military force in the galaxy. Warboss. An Ork war boss is the strongest, toughest, loudest and most violent Ork in his tribe. These massive greenskins seize the lion's share of the loot from every fight, meaning they are usually armed and armored better than any of their followers. War bosses are not above making a swift and messy example of anyone whose kit seems shinier or more killy than theirs. They wield absolute authority over the tribe, for greenskin society is based on the idea that might makes right. While some war bosses show glimmerings of intelligence, all are at the best when busting heads and bellowing until things are done their way. A war boss will generally be able to get the lads to battle in some semblance of order, but strategy and tactical thinking are not usually the strong suits. Rather, a war boss is a mountain of muscle and violence who will invariably lead from the front, rampaging through the enemy ranks with shooter blazing and power claw swinging wildly. Especially successful war bosses will continue to grow in both stature and power with every war they win. Eventually, the greatest of them will come to lead a warg of apocalyptic size. All other starfaring races dread the rise of such a warlord, for he will command a horde capable of drowning whole star systems in war and causing the deaths of billions. Big Mech. Especially talented or popular mech boys will soon attract a following, lording it over a growing gang of underlings. A mech with this much clout is referred to as a big mech, and can prove indispensable to the local war boss with his knowledge of shock attack guns, force field technology, and teleporter rigs. Yet war bosses don't willingly suffer rivals. If a big mech gets too big for his boots, he will soon find himself at the business end of a very large gun, probably the one he built for the boss a couple of weeks earlier. In such circumstances, most big mechs will choose exile. Such freebooter big mechs either wind up hiring out their skills to a new tribe, or else building their very own warband replete with clanking, roaring walkers, seething mobs of looters and burner boys, and ramshackle masses of battle wagons and artillery. Mech. Ork mechs go to war festooned in clanking, smoke-belching contraptions of their own design. These eccentric inventions confound friend and foe alike, as the purpose often remains a mystery until the big red button gets pushed. When triggered, a mech's latest invention might fire blasts of energy that immolate swathes of the enemy, or project wobbling bubbles of force to protect nearby boys from harm. On the other hand, it might belch showers of sparks before engulfing its operator and everyone nearby in a roiling ball of flame. Yet occasional malfunctions are forgiven by the Orks, for even when a mech boy's temperamental nuwhat's-it does decide to explode, at least it gives the boys a good laugh. Without mech boys, Orks would lack for light, power, transport, and even guns. They lack for sanitation regardless, but that's another story. Whenever an Ork needs something building, be it a shiny new shooter or the boss new ride, they go straight to the mechs. Furthermore, an Ork with teeth to spare will take the existing kit to the nearest mech in the hope of having the damage repaired, and maybe some customizing done. It is a rare day that the customer gets what he asked for, but whatever the mech turns out will normally be fairly flash all the same. Pain boys. Often referred to by other Orks as docs, pain boys are the greenskin equivalent of both surgeons and dentists. They are driven to perform exploratory surgery on living creatures just as mech boys are driven to fiddle with machinery. Devious, deranged, and usually covered in gore from head to toe, pain boys are a menace to friend and foe alike. These sadistic butchers grin through every crunch, squelch and spurt as they ply the trade amid the fires of battle. Pain boys prefers their victims conscious so they can make sure they're still alive. Yet Ork physiology is incredibly durable, their pain threshold high enough that all but the most grievously invasive procedures can be survived. Pain boys' brutal liberties are normally overlooked, especially when a doc successfully restaples a prominent knob's head mid-battle, or furnishes the war boss with a brand new flame-throwing bionic arm. Weird boys. Weird boys are the most psychically attuned of all Orks. They are capable of vomiting blasts of warp energy that can reduce foes to molten goop in seconds. Weird boys unconsciously channel the background mental emissions of nearby greenskins. Even a close-run squig-eating contest between two rowdy boys will cause waves of energy to pulse through any weird boy that strays near. Unless the weird boy finds some way to release this pent-up energy, his head will explode, detonating the heads of nearby Orks in the bargain. This can prove highly inconvenient. Any weird boy lucky enough to reach maturity will have learned how to release his powers in a searing energy blast or destructive wave. Though this makes the weird boy feel fantastic, it can result in a messy death for anyone in his vicinity. Some weird boys, known as warp heads, become addicted to the thrill of spewing warg energy, actively seeking out the deadly rush of battle. However, for most weird boys the battlefield is a miserable and dangerous place. They must normally be dragged there by burly minders, pointed unceremoniously at the foe, and forced to spew mighty bolts of ectoplasmic energy in their general direction. This affords the weird boy a few moments of blissful relief before the whole process begins again. Elites. Meganob. The richest and most battle-hardened nobs can become meganobs by paying a mech to build them a suit of mega armor. Piston-driven and covered in enough protective plating to turn its wearer into a walking tank, this armor is incredibly expensive. Yet it serves as the ultimate greenskin status symbol. Though other Orks smog the meganobs for wearing so much armor, only the dullest would do so within earshot. Even a direct hit from a tank round is unlikely to do more than knock a meganob over, worsening his already foul temper. For many, the only chance of surviving an encounter with an angry meganob is to outrun him. To counteract this weakness, many meganobs roars into battle aboard armored battle wagons. This saves time that would be wasted slogging across the battlefield and helps the meganobs get stuck straight into combat. Nob. Second in status only to the tribe's warboss, Ork nobs are big, bad and brutal. Serving as a crude greenskin ruling class, the nobs are never above reminding the boys who's in charge by making a few bloody examples. This could involve hacking up some suitably impressive foes, or knocking a few fractious boys' blocks off. The nobs aren't too fussy, just so long as it gets the message across. Whether clustered in a menacing mob around their war boss, or lording it over the boys, nobs are a force to be reckoned with. Their armor is usually festooned with kill trophies, their flesh crisscrossed with impressive scars, earned in pit fights or while killing their way through strings of brutal wars. Some nobs even takes to the field astride monstrous warbikes, roaring through the enemy ranks like blood-soaked battering rams covered in guns. Burner Boy. Burner boys are dedicated arsonists, all advancing on the foe amid gouts of billowing flame. They love nothing more than burning other people's stuff, and the owners too if they can get 'em. These lunatics will set light to anything or anyone for the simple joy of watching 'em do the Bernie dance. They can prove utterly lethal to tightly packed or lightly armored infantry, the roiling blasts of the burners flushing their victims out of cover amid the sizzle. Commandos. Where most orcs love getting stuck in with a minimum of mucking about, commandos prefers to spread panic and fear behind enemy lines. They embody the low cunning common in most orcs, but taken to the extreme. A commando would rather sneak up on his victim and stick a dagger through their ribs than just run at them yelling. There can be no greater satisfaction to these orcs than the thump of exploding ammunition dumps or the screams of enemies as stick bombs clatter into the barracks. They especially save the disbelieving expressions of victims caught in the jaws of a perfect orc ambush. Festooned with bombs, guns and blades, these sneaky gits lurk in the shadows until the boss gives the signal, at which point the commandos explode from cover, howling bloody murder and hacking their shocked victims to bits in the name of Glock and Mork. Tank Buster. Tank busters are orcs who have become completely addicted to the thrill of destroying the armored fighting vehicles of their foes. Their desire to hunt down and slay the biggest, most dangerous tanks they can find echoes the primal instinct of the big game hunter. Indeed, as primitive hunters might claim a gruesome trophy from a fallen beast to better brag of its demise, so tank busters will strip their choicest loot from the wreckage of a ruined tank. Colorful hull plates are hammered into crude armor, internal gubbins worn proudly as warrior jewelry, and the flayed skins of crewmen are draped around the tank busters' shoulders like pelts. They equip themselves extensively for dealing death to enemy armor. Their whistling volleys of rockets and lethal tank buster bomb assaults can spell annihilation for even the heaviest enemy tanks. Fast attack. Warbikers. Mobs of orc warbikers, or biker boys, race into battle at suicidal speeds, exhausts belching greasy clouds of smoke. As they hurtle toward the enemy ranks, the warbikers fill the air with a murderous storm of shots from the blazing dagger guns. Surrounded by billowing clouds of smoke and dust, the warbikers are protected from the worst of the enemy's return fire. By the time the biker boys thunder out of this swelling cloud, they are all but on top of the foe. Wide-eyed and panting behind goggles and dust masks, most warbikers' need for speed is such that they can barely stand to stay still for 5 solar minutes. The more canny war bosses use this to their advantage, sending their warbikers to trigger traps and ambushes prematurely, to run down enemy supply convoys, or to soften up the foe's defenses before the rest of the tribe gives them a good stomping. Flyboys. Orc flyboys are part of a subculture of orc speed freaks whose need for speed far outstrips the ground-based orc brethren. Although most orcs prefer to keep their feet firmly on the ground, there are a few unstable individuals amongst the tribes that developed a craving to fly through the air like a bird. They take to the sky in search of ever greater exhilaration. The afflicted orc seeks great thrills from speed and danger, driving or, in extreme cases, flying faster and faster. Those afflicted are called speed freaks, and regardless of their original clan, invariably belong to the cult of speed. The majority of speed cultists come from the Evil Sun's clan, but not all, and the maniac can seize any orc. Few victims actually become pilots, because most orcs have a natural distrust of flying, and much prefer to remain with their feet solidly upon the ground, where the proper scrapping is done. Stormboys. Young and rebellious, Stormboys strives to stand out amongst the anarchy of orc society. They studiously ape authority figures, practice things until they can do them right, and openly polish the boots in public places, much to the disgust of their elders. Yet no matter how much they fly in the face of greenskin values, with their willful forward planning and blatant regard for the rules, Stormboys are still orcs. They live to get stuck into a good bloody fight as quickly as they can. To this end, the Stormboy Corps strikes deals with local mechs to equip them with large, noisy rocket packs. These they use to propel themselves toward the foe amid resounding, and suspiciously well-synchronized, bellows of wog, striking the enemy line like ballistic missiles and hacking apart anything unlucky enough to find itself in arm's reach. War buggy. Orcs tend toward light, fast vehicles with big guns that can be cobbled together from any junk to hand. Most are crewed by a mad-eyed orc driver and cackling gunner, with perhaps a grot or two hanging on for dear life. What they lack in survivability, these crude vehicles make up for in speed, numbers and ducker. They encircle the enemy in speeding squadrons, guns blazing wildly while the crew throw their heads back and howl like mad boys. Most consist of little more than chassis, engine, gubbins and a sizable gun, and are capable of an impressive turn of speed. For traversing dense terrain, some war buggies will be converted into the half-track war tracks, while the addition of a jutting flamethrower, some sloshing fuel tanks and a crew of slavering burner boys transforms a war buggy into the much-feared scorcher. Deathcopter. Deathcopters buzz across the battlefield, weaving through the sky on a trail of foul-smelling smoke. As they swoop low over the heads of the enemy, the fiendish orc flying machines fire punishing salvos of shot, rockets and bombs into their midst. Leaving flames and blood-splattered craters in their wake, the deathcopters jink erratically away, already hunting for their next victims. Deathcopters are able to navigate over the roughest terrain in order to hunt down the foe. Many get blown out of the sky when first sighted thanks to overconfidence on the part of their warlike pilots. Yet those orcs with a real knack for the job have the self-control to locate the enemy, then lead the rest of the boys down on top of them. These rare greenskins take pride in finding the best scraps for the rest of the tribe to get stuck into, before diving down to join the fun. Dakajet. Streaking into battle through war-scorched skies, a Dakajet's massive thruster leaves an oily contrail of black smoke in its wake even as its gun spits streams of bullets at the foe. They're not as nimble as the aircraft of some other starfaring races. Dakajets are capable of an incredible turn of speed that makes them a fearsome enemy to face in aerial combat. It also helps that orcs fly like complete head cases. Dakajet pilots are great believers in quantity over quality. As such, they ensure the mechs strap every gun available to the fuselages of their jet. In the heat of battle, while corkscrewing madly through formations of enemy aircraft, Dakajet pilots will cut loose with an absolute storm of fire. Some have even been known to smash out their cockpit glass with the butts of the sluggers in order to add their own pistol fire to that of their plane. All of this makes Dakajet pilots unusually effective shots. With so many bullets fired, some are bound to hit the target. Burner bomber. Burner bombers are an inevitable byproduct of the orcs' love for speed, fire, and the desire to combine these things while killing something. Strapped with as many incendiary bombs and rockets as is physically feasible, burner bombers streak low over the battlefield, raining conflagrant death down on tightly packed enemy infantry. The wild-eyed burner boy pilots of these crafts like to watch the targets burn up close and crispy. As such, they regularly return to base with their undercarriage staked with gore and scorch marks. Burner bombers sometimes carry Scorcher missiles, making them even more deadly. These corkscrewing missiles make a mockery of fortifications, their warheads bursting in conflagratory showers that drive their victims from cover, or else cook them alive within defenses turned death traps. Blitzer bomber. Even on the best day, the average Ork flyboy has little patience for trajectories, payload arcs, and all the other boring bits of the high-altitude bombing. Blitzer bomber pilots instead ensure their massively unsubtle boom bombs land more or less on target by simply dropping them from point-blank range. To pull this off, Blitzer bomber pilots throw their aircraft into screaming nosedives, the terrified Grot bombardiers pulling the bomb release lever at the last possible moment. After a loud clank and some alarming shuddering, the bomb plunges groundward and explodes more or less on target with a thunderous bang. With his payload away, the cackling flyboy hopefully pulls up. These maneuvers don't always end well, and most grots have to be forcibly nailed into the bombardier's nests to avoid him bailing out before takeoff. Troops. Ork boys. Ork boys are the heart and soul of any warband. They charge into battle in a great mass, crashing into the enemy like a green landslide. Bellowing with the joy of battle, mobs of Ork boys excel at close quarters, where they can hack, bludgeon and stamp the foes into bloody ruin. The average Ork boy is mean-tempered and exceptionally tough, more than compensating for his lack of intellect with a talent for violence. Though an Ork can cause plenty of damage with his fists, feet and forehead, it takes a lot to separate one from his favorite chopper. When it comes to firearms, Orks love simplicity. They value noise and sheer weight of fire, though so long as a gun can double as a decent club, its owner is usually happy enough. Some greenskins will even get their hands on crude heavy weapons with which they can cause absolute havoc. Runthards. An Ork Runthard, also known as a slaver, is an Ork odd boy who has the uncharacteristic patience to take care of his clan or warbands, Gretchen and Snotlings. The characteristic weapons are whips, grabber sticks and grot prods. They are often seen leading Gretchen mobs into the fray or ordering around the Gretchen crews of big guns. They often make use of squig hounds to eat errant or fleeing grots in battle to increase the morale of the Gretchen mob. The Runthards make a good living by selling well-trained Gretchen and Snotling servants and workers to other Orks. Runthards often becomes quite wealthy and naturally invest their earned teeth, the Ork currency, in solid weaponry and other war gear. On the battlefield they tend to either fight alongside the machines crewed by the Gretchen where they can keep a close eye on things, or lead a large mob of Gretchens forward, using the smaller Orkoids as a diversion, living shields or living mine detectors for the other bands of boys. Gretchen, or grots, flood across the battlefield in great squabbling mobs. Individually feeble and cowardly, grots can nonetheless prove surprisingly dangerous in large numbers. Herded squealing toward the foe by the irascible old bullies known as Runthards, the tiny greenskins are made to fight tooth and claw for the pitiful lives. When forced to fight or die, a sizable mob of grots can overrun even a well-prepared foe, clawing and biting frantically in their desperation to stay alive. Though not especially dangerous up close, the average Gretchen is more than capable of outshooting his Ork masters. This talent goes largely to waste, of course, as no self-respecting Ork is going to let some runty grot strut about with a decent shooter. However, accumulated salvo with the so-called grot blasters can cause a surprising amount of bloodshed. Heavy support. Gorkanaut. A Gorkanaut is everything an Ork aspires to be. Massive, tough, loud and destructive, its blocky silhouette looms menacingly over friend and foe alike. From its hulking, Orkoid shape to the brutal weapons it wields, a Gorkanaut epitomizes the unsubtle brutality of Gork and his no-nonsense way of war. Every Gorkanaut is essentially a massively overbuilt armored warsuit bristling with ducker and packing an armored claw the size of a killer can. They are ideal for a lone nob who wants to make a name for himself, serving as a weapon, transport and, rather cramped and smelly, home all in one. Gorkanauts have become especially popular in recent years as more greenskins are seized by visions of the Great Warg and find themselves compelled to pilot these mighty engines into battle, trampling their panicked foes as they go. Morkanaut. Where Gorkanauts epitomize the unsubtle brutality of almighty Gork, a Morkanaut displays all the lethal cunning of equally almighty Mork. Every Morkanaut is personally built and piloted by a skilled mech boy, and packs a wild array of energy weapons and glowy gubbins from the mech's own workshop. Morkanaut pilots, like their Gorkanaut equivalents, are usually outcasts. Some feel the call of the Great Warg and set out to cause carnage in the name of Mork, while others hunt like violent magpies from the technological secrets of other starfaring races. A rare few, known as bad mechs, will be ejected forcibly from the tribe for crimes such as using the local Weird Boy Tower for target practice. These rogue pilots are especially dangerous, and will often begin their wanderings by flattening their former tribe's settlement with their Morkanauts' guns. Death Dread. Death Dreads are clanking monstrosities that behave in battle much like enormous metal orcs. They clank toward the foot-waving piston-driven arms that end in saws, claws and really big guns. Lurching along as fast as their hydraulic legs will carry them, the bellows of Warg echo from inbuilt speakers at ear-splitting volume. Though all this is hugely entertaining for orcs fighting alongside a Death Dread, for enemies it is utterly terrifying. Death Dreads epitomize the unstoppable ferocity of the greenskin race, and the damage they can do is jaw-dropping. The brutal implantation surgery and subsequent claustrophobia tends to drive Death Dread pilots a bit bonkers. They will take any opportunity to vent the frustrations violently upon the foe, if only to make themselves feel better about having to eat everything through a straw. Killer Can. Killer cans bear many similarities to Death Dreads, with the snipping claws, chugging heavy weapons, and lumpy metal hulls. Yet in place of an enraged orc, killer cans are piloted by cackling grots. Though individually smaller than a Death Dread, killer cans charge toward the enemy lines in jostling mobs of riveted iron and roaring saw blades. The killer can's grot pilots put their relative skill with firearms to good use, blowing the zog out of anything unlucky enough to cross the path. Despite being hardwired into a 10-foot-tall killing machine. 10 foot is like 3 meters. Killer can pilots still retain a good degree of gretch and cowardice. As a result, they still believe in safety in numbers and have a bad habit of losing their nerve under fire. It is not unheard of for killer cans to waddle about in circles, or freeze up entirely at the first sign of danger. Battle Wagon. Orc battle wagons rumble to war on a collection of tracks, tires and massive spiked rollers. Whether lumbering gun fortresses, bright red speedsters or gaudy rust buckets smeared with orc glyphs, battle wagons are massive slabs of motorized junk built to carry big mobs of greenskins into battle. No matter each battle wagon's individual peculiarities, all fulfill the essential role of armored attack vehicle. A solid wedge of these mighty tanks can provide a warband with a somewhat rusty, mailed fist that can be jammed right down the throat of the enemy army. With guns booming and death rollers coated in mud and gore, orc battle wagons carve a path of bloody ruin through the foe while their orc passengers blaze away at the dazed survivors, and bellow "Warg" at the top of their lungs. Truck. Orc trucks speed into battle at breakneck pace, mobs of boys crammed into their rear compartments or hanging recklessly from their hulls. As they close with the foe, the truck's gunners blaze away wildly. As the enemy lines loom large, the driver puts his foot down, squeezing out an extra spurt of acceleration from his ride. With a roar like a predatory beast, the trucks plow into the enemy's midst before the boys on board pile out and get stuck in. Boys who spend a lot of time fighting and, in some cases, living out of the same truck will soon take to personalizing their ride with clannish paint jobs, grisly trophies, kill markings and all manner of dangerous stat. It has been known for entire warbands of evil sons or freebooters to form into truck mobs, riding to battle in ragged columns amid vast clouds of exhaust smoke and dust. Mech gun. The roar of mech guns has heralded the end for many a hapless foe. Spitting out blasts of crackling energy, swatting planes out of the air or crushing their victims in crackling fists of bright green force, these big, clanky field guns have enough ducker to stomp even the toughest targets. Of course, as no self-respecting orc would be left behind when there's a fight in the offing, crewing the guns is left to the long-suffering grots. The orcs drag the mech guns into battle behind speeding battle wagons and trucks before abandoning them in a heap and leaving the grots to sort them out. Though capable of blasting a tank in half or scything down enemy infantry, these weapons are just as likely to backfire explosively. The biggest hazard for enemies facing mech guns is that, until they start firing, no one is really sure what they will do. Flash gits. The gun-crazy show-offs known as flash gits are skilled at breaking heads up close or blasting their enemies into tiny, glowing bits with equal style. Amongst the richest and most obnoxious of their warlike breed, flash gits travel the galaxy engaging in acts of outrageous piracy and wanton vandalism. They hire themselves out as mercenaries to orc warbands, basking in the envy of boys jealous of their flashy kit and prodigious ducker. Despite their ostentation, flash gits give a war boss all the kill power he pays for. Completely lethal in gun battles, boarding actions and the like, a mob of gits opening fire is nothing short of cataclysmic. A punishing hail of energy bolts and bullets fills the air, the flash gits' victims coming apart amid sprays of blood and blossoms of flame before the gits stomp the life out of anyone left standing. Looters. Toting massive def guns that fill the air with a rain of shots, rockets and energy blasts, looter mobs provide a warband with much-needed and extremely heavy covering fire. When a mob of looters cuts loose the overwhelming storm of ducker they create churns infantry to a blood-soaked pulp while tanks shudder and clang, their crews and systems perforated until the vehicles shudder to a halt, leaking oil and gore. Looters tend to be about the heaviest armed orcs going, largely due to their natural flair for larceny, cons and general light-fingered thievery. They often befriend mechs, trading their ill-gotten gains for ever more custom ducker. Many mech boys cannot resist tinkering with the def gun's worky bits even as the looters begin firing, preventing messy mishaps and ensuring that they perform to the full, devastating potential. Super heavy vehicles. Gargants and mega-gargants. The gargant is the orc equivalent of an imperial titan. Gargants are as many idols of the savage orc gods, Gork and Mork, as they are engines of destruction. Big mech orcs receive a divine vision of sorts from Gork, or possibly Mork, and set out to bring that vision to life in the artistic medium of thick armor plates, smoke-belching engines, and lots of very large guns. This activity quickly spreads amongst other big mechs in the local orc-settled area who seek to compete in gargant building, and soon gargants spring up all over the place. The construction of gargants is one of the typical signs of an impending warg from an orc-held star system. In an orc warband, there can exist gargants and gargant-like war machines from killer cans, which are the orc equivalent of the Space Marine dreadnoughts, crewed by a single Gretchen to the vast armored behemoths that are the mega-gargants. Stomper. A stomper is an effigy of war built by the orcs, the brutal gods. Cobbled together in typical orc fashion, the stomper's bulk is festooned with overlapping metal plates, bolted atop one another to present a formidable frame and allow the stomper to shrug off incoming firepower. It has a large crew of orcs and grots to keep its vast engine going and its weapons blazing away. And stompers are festooned with weapons, ranging from big shooters and scorchers poking out from between their protective plates to the def cannon, an enormous piece of ordnance, and the bullet-spewing super gatler. A stomper can also carry a full mob of orcs to war, ready to jump out and put the boot in at a moment's notice. Once in combat, a stomper wields its mega-chopper, a massive whirring blade that can cleave a bastion in two or hack a titan down to size in a flurry of roaring violence. Orc starships. Orcs utilize a wide variety of star-faring vessels to cross the immense interstellar distances of the void. Most orc void craft sports some kind of totem or decoration at the bow to give it the appearance of a massive orc head. A kill cruiser, a common ramshackle orc void ship, possesses this type of prow. These vessels can be massive and are classified as battle cruisers when they have reached a size in excess of 30 megatons or more. Other orc vessels found alongside the cruisers include gunships and other escorts. The orcs utilize a small boarding ship known as a brute ram ship to breach the hulls of their enemies, though most orcs are happy to ram any type of ship into the foes. Orcs also use asteroids as warships, hollowing them out and adding engines and weaponry so that they are capable of warp travel. These rocks make for extremely durable voidcraft, and can easily be created in each new star system the Greenskins attack to replace any losses they suffer. Another method of travel favored by the orc race is via space hulks. These titanic amalgamations of numerous starships, asteroids, and other spaceborne debris become mobile colonies for orc raiders. When a space hulk is found by a clan of orcs, they quickly board the vessel and begin scavenging all they can from the immense ramshackle vessel to fuel their war efforts. Mechboys begins fabricating weapons, armor, and vehicles almost immediately as metals and other valuable assets are salvaged and stockpiled in areas of the hulk. Often completely new void ships can even be assembled inside the huge holds or caverns to be found within massive space hulks. A space hulk usually has no means of propulsion of its own. It simply travels on the flows and eddies of the warp on a journey across the void. Industrious mechs and weirdboys can sometimes assist in moving a space hulk into a warp rift or other passage, but this is by no means an exact form of travel. This suits the orcs just fine, as it appeals to the sense of adventure and conquest. They feel that a space hulk is a gift from the gods Gork and Mork, taking them to new and exciting battles. A space hulk is often accompanied by fleets of cruisers and other Greenskin escort vessels as it moves through the void to its next destination. When an Imperial world detects the imminent arrival of a space hulk, it often sends waves of panic throughout the sector. There are many well-known legends and rumors of the destruction such a vessel can bring, and many are based in horrific fact. Orcs in the game. Orc culture was originally intended as a long-running joke and has given birth to several concepts widely recognized among Warhammer 40,000 gamers. For example, most long-time Warhammer 40,000 hobbyists have a collection of assorted metal pieces, additional weapons, and parts left over from modeling projects which they keep around in the expectation that they may be useful in future scratch-built models. Games Workshop encourages this practice by giving prizes for the best gamer built-in models at their annual Golden Demon Awards, and by including a choice of weapons or optional parts in their own models. This has become known as a bits box, for the orc spelling of the storage space where a mech boy keeps his stock of reserve parts. Similarly, it is a well-known fact among tabletop gamers that red WUNZ go faster, from the orc belief that this is so. Finally, there is a general orc stereotype portrayed by hunching the head down between the shoulders, showing off one's teeth, and talking like this, "Ya understand, ya stupid grot," in a faux Cockney English accent. Shouts of "Wag da orcs! 'Ere we go, 'ere we go, 'ere we go," or even chants of "Ducker" can often be heard at Warhammer 40,000 tournaments, particularly when an orc player is doing well, but also as a sort of general rallying cry for the entire hobby. The Imperial battle cry of "Kill the mutants," "Burn the heretics," "Purge the unclean," does not seem to have the same appeal, although the Khornate Berserker's cry of "Blood for the Blood God," "Skulls for the Skull Throne," etc., has enjoyed similar success in recent years, but not such popularity. Orks first appeared in the first edition Rogue Trader rulebook and the Space Orks box set, containing 30 plastic miniatures. Some Games Workshop designers claimed that orc culture and military tactics are loosely based on that of the ancient Irish Celts. These orcs were squat, powerfully muscled humanoids, wielding crude ballistic weaponry, usually black powder or other explosive projectile-based kinetic weapons, and large stick bombs, or stick grenades, along with their helmets and other paraphernalia. These are apparently modeled on Imperial German equipment from World War I. As the Warhammer 40,000 game evolved, some of the clunkier, if more flavor-filled, rules regarding orcs were dropped, though the culture remained much the same. For example, "Ere We Go" contains several pages of rules from mobs of madboys, orcs whom even other orcs consider maladjusted. It should be noted that an average orc would be considered dangerously aggressive to the point of insanity in human society. The madboys change the behavior unpredictably according to dice rolls whenever conditions change, for example, when an enemy unit charges into combat with them. A roll is first made to determine which subset of behavior is going to apply, such as schizo and manic. Then another roll is made to see how this overall insanity manifests. The results vary from charging the closest enemy, with bonuses to the combat attributes, "Wag dat makes me mad," to phobic avoidance of all vehicles, even ones on their own side, "Keep them warren technical bids away." Whilst often very amusing, this was highly time-consuming and dropped in the later editions of the game, which were streamlined for combat. In the current incarnation, orcs are very much a close combat-optimized species, their weapons having short range and low accuracy, though this can sometimes be made up by sheer numbers. Orcs are quite cheap in terms of in-game points. That is, it is possible to build a very large army, colloquially known as a sea of green, or green tide, from the skin color of the orcs. This is often necessary, since the effectiveness of an individual orc at any but the shortest range is small, and the orc commander must be prepared to absorb considerable casualties in his effort to close in for axe chopper work. This is in contrast to their earlier editions, where a large number of fun, but inaccurate weapons and special rules could easily make them rather unfocused, a jack-of-all-trades army, but master of none. Some have accused the Games Workshop designers of regarding the orcs more as comic relief than as a serious army, and being more concerned with the faction's flavor than the effect of weapons designed for them. If so, they have reined in their imaginations considerably where orcs are concerned, drawing the race more into line with the overall gritty and dark feel of the Warhammer 40,000 universe in recent editions. End. Thank you for your time. If you enjoyed this audiobook, leave a comment and like. Now I understand why orcs, or at least their catchphrases, are so popular. Playing them back in the day was so funny and full of surprises. Get to the chopper! Fits here ideally. Anyway, visit my Facebook, Blogspot or Patreon. Have a nice day. Bye bye.